the incredible unhuman massiveness of those vast stone towers and ramparts had saved the frightful thing from utter annihilation in the hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions, of years it had brooded there amidst the blasts of a bleak upland. Corona Mundi, roof of the world. All sorts of fantastic phrases sprang to our lips as we looked dizzily down at the unbelievable spectacle. I thought again of the eldritch primal mist that had so persistently haunted me since my first sight of this dead Antarctic world, of the demonic plateau of Leng, of the Migo or abominable snowmen of the Himalayas, of the narcotic manuscripts with their pre-human implications, of the Cthulhu cult, of the Necronomicon, and of the Hyborian legends of formless Sathagua, and the worse-than-formless starspawn associated with that semi-entity. Good evening, folks, and welcome to Having a Drink with Mink. I'm your host, Jason Mink, and I was just getting caught up on the works of one of my favorite authors, H.P. Lovecraft. Born August 20th, 1890, in Providence, Rhode Island, Howard Phillips Lovecraft was an American writer of weird and speculative fiction. Best known today for establishing the Cthulhu mythos, Lovecraft was also an historian, antiquarian, and poet. Author of over 50 published short stories, as well as 5 novellas and 1 novel, the Rhode Island resident nonetheless lived his life in semi-obscurity, his name known only to a handful of correspondents and those who purchased the pulp magazines that carried his work. His view of cosmicism and the unknowable truths of the universe gave his stories an icy realism and edge over the more romanticized tales popular in weird fiction of the time. After his death in 1937, Lovecraft's work became more widely known thanks to publisher Arkham House. In recent decades, elements of this work has been homaged, satirized, or outright stolen. Indeed, more money has been made off of Lovecraft by hacks, opportunists, and grifters than the author would ever see in his lifetime. For all that, the work remains, consistently in print and perpetuating the author's unique concepts and cosmic perspective. The Thing on the Doorstep and Other Weird Tales is brought to us by Guillermo Del Toro. That is right. Del Toro is a fantastic director and quite the Lovecraft fan as well, from what I understand. He was slated to direct At the Mountains of Madness, the Lovecraft tale that I was just reading from. Maybe that was like 7-8 years back. Sadly, that film not to be, which is a shame, because if anyone has the vision to bring Lovecraft's work to the big screen, it would be Del Toro, but well, we got this as a nice little consolation prize, didn't we? The Thing on the Doorstep and Other Weird Stories. I gotta say, cover caught my eye from a distance, for sure. Think they call that the Innsmouth look. And, wow, how about those all-black pages? What does one need to do to read from a book with all-black pages, Mink? Oh, I'm afraid I can't tell you that. For free, anyway. As you can see, we've got some Lovecraft books here. We're going to clip through these real fast, just because. Seems like the thing to do. This was my introduction to the author. Now, these belong to a friend's parent. They'd been stashed in the basement for many a year. They still faintly have that riff, but his dad was in the military and may have bought these on a PX or something like that. And these are the covers that a lot of people of a certain age think of when you mention Lovecraft, because, man, kind of hard to forget those images, huh? But that was the groovy thing about the late 60s, early 70s horror revival, is you had all these hippie artists hanging around, looking for work. What do? You set them at a couple Lovecraft paperbacks and they generate this kind of stuff. Hey, why not, huh? Everybody wins. Now, if you grew up in the 1980s, this may have been your first introduction to H.P. Lovecraft. In fact, I believe I gave one of these to my brother for his birthday. And there's a lot of great stuff in here. Never really thought much of that artwork. Felt that it kind of missed the mark. This stuff, much weirder, much more effective, but that's just me. And then we're going to move on to the big boy books. Now, these are the Arkham House editions. My copies are beyond well read. Absolutely. Some of them have been through wars, but happy to have H.P. Lovecraft's Dagon and Other Macabre Tales. Now, this is the author in his fantasist phase when he was producing work more along the lines of that of Arthur Machen, William Hope Hodgson, those kind of creators. And then here is the Dunwich Horror and Others. This was always my favorite of these volumes, and it's missing its slipcover. Why? Well, because I was tackled by a cop oh so many years ago for a complete misunderstanding, I assure you. I was not the one they were looking for, but it completely damaged my book, kind of, cacked the spine a little bit and stuff, and, oh, hey, my Social Security card. This may be useful someday. Hang on to that. And then what next? Here's The Horror in the Museum, and here's another well-read beater copy, if you will, but nonetheless happy to have this now. Horror in the Museum is a collection of Lovecraft works where he would have revised or worked in tandem with other authors to finish their stories. Lovecraft rented himself out as a proofreader, and, you got a little bit more when Lovecraft would go through one of your stories. Not only would he correct all the English, but he would correct the concepts and the ideas as well sometimes. Not necessarily what you paid for, but, hey, I guess whatever it takes to, get your story in weird tales. Now here's H.P. Lovecraft's A Biography by L. Sprague de Camp, who is another fantasist author of note. And, I think that's a spider web. I guess I need to pull these off the shelf more often. Well, I'll put this down here lest they hatch. That one, as far as biographies go, not so great. I feel that DeCamp didn't really do the research while he was more or less a contemporary of Lovecraft. I don't think he really knew him all that well. Now, I'm not saying you have to be overly sympathetic to your subject matter, but, I would say you want to do something more along the lines of H.P. Lovecraft's A Life by S.T. Yoshi. Now, this is a phenomenal book, I must say, and once again, very well read, but I can't tell you how many times I've taken this thing on the bus, various travels and things like that. It is a massive tome from Necronomicon Press, and Yoshi really gets to the bottom of Lovecraft. The man was very complex. He had some very controversial views, many of which had come to be modified by the end of his life. People don't like to necessarily talk about that, but, that's life. It's adaptation. It's change. And one thing that Lovecraft has shown us is that, those ideas are consistent and persistent. And Lovecraft, while he may be more popular than ever these days, and you see that in not only movies, but in video games, comic books, and more. Now, I picked up this little statuette at my local comic book shop. Say it with me now. That's Ides Entertainment. If you're in beautiful downtown Pittsburgh, make it a point to stop at Ides Entertainment. I mean, you could take home an eldritch horror just like this. The figurine has no identifying markings, which is consistent with the nameless horror often associated with these type of things. The piece is clearly meant to be Cthulhu, although amped up a bit for today's more demanding consumer. All of the little details are here, from the Emma to the ruins of the once sunken city of R'lyeh, and even sports a fairly impressive wingspan. A nice little piece in the raw, although when the stars are right, I may just pull out the paint and brushes and see about adding a little color to this guy. Next up, in keeping with the Lovecraft vibe of this show, how about a 3-mans for $5 H.P. Lovecraft mashup? Why not? I mean, who would have seen that coming? Now, this is Herbert West, Herbert West was the title character from the story Herbert West Reanimator, and in the 1980s, he was the star of a few films, ably performed by actor Jeffrey Combs. Now, this is the NECA figure, and he is a great figure. Really happy to add him to the collection. He looks fantastic with the other monsters, but, well, he's all alone. Yes, I have the Dr. Hill head that comes with him. It's in a pan, and there's the cat that's halfway cut in half. I have that too, but I can't help but feel that, he needs someone to, push around, to browbeat, to gaslight, if you will. And that guy, of course, would be Dan. Now, Dan, I don't think that he was in the original story, but, I guess they felt Stuart Gordon knew that you needed a little comic relief in your story. You needed someone for Herbert to play off of. And so I thought that Dan would be a worthy addition to our action figure shelf. But how do we make such a character? Because gosh knows NECA isn't going to do it. Well, I went and looked through my action figure bin. I found 2 suitable suspects, and here they are. Right off the bat, we have It's a Bird, Superman. Obvious reasons why we call him that, and I thought that he might be a decent candidate because I wanted to do the figure on a classic Mego body, especially because I have some shoes for him, and they would fit this guy. They wouldn't fit this guy. This is a new Mego. And as you can tell, if you're in the know, he was a Star Trek figure because he's got the boots. So I guess we'll work with this guy because the head sculpt, far more on point. Absolutely. I think this makes a much better Dan than this Rye SOB, for sure. But thank you for playing. We'll put you right there. Okay, now this guy is obligingly naked, so we can get right to it. We're going to stand him there. So how does one make a Dan figure? Well, we have a couple different options. We could do him in a civilian guise. We could do him in his wife beater covered in blood from the end of the movie. But for most of the film, he appears in scrubs. And so that's how we're going to represent Dan. And we have this. Now, this is the DST Limited Edition Collector's Set, Thor. Now, I pulled the Mego-style Thor out of this package, and he's up on the shelf with the other guys, but I had this other stuff just lying around. Didn't quite know what to do with it. I have no use for a contemporary Thor, gosh knows, and didn't really think there was, my dolls needed a doctor, unless they got into the liquor. But then I realized this would be ideal, so we're going to take this outfit out of this packaging, and we're going to put it on this guy, and we're going to see how he looks. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present Dan? Looking good, Dan, I must say. You ready to reanimate some corpses? Dan said yes. Okay, so right off the bat, not bad for an out-of-the-box custom, for sure. He's really more of just a modification when it comes right down to it. Certainly room for improvement as far as it goes. I think that I'm going to hand wash these clothes, then I'm going to machine wash this outfit maybe once or twice. See if I can get it to shrink up a little bit, because the tailoring isn't quite as sharp as Herbert West there. But I gotta say, all in all, I'm pretty happy with how this guy came out. He has 2 display options, one with the coat and one without. Looking pretty good either way. Now, initially, I'd hoped for a more hapless head for Dan. Certainly not the sharpest knife in the drawer, hence Herbert's ability to take advantage of him. But nonetheless, I think this will do very nicely if you want to make your own Dan from Reanimator figure. Well, it's just this easy. You're going to want to track down a Mego body. In this instance, I used a new Mego body. It was a Mr. Scott, I believe, popped his head on off. Comes with these here boots, which I thought, might be problematic, but the heel isn't so big that it causes a problem. Quite happy with the way they turned out. This is the outfit from, once again, the DST Mego Thor. Then this is the head from the old 9-inch Mego Buck Rogers, or was it Flash Gordon? I always get them confused. But it's been shrunk down by some industrious folks for use on the 8-inch body, and it works very, very nicely. So quite happy to add Dan to the collection. Now, at some point in time, probably going to put a blood smear or two on him, but need to watch the movie once again just to make sure that, I put it in the right place, because that kind of thing is important as I indulge in my beverage of choice. And it turns out not only did we get Dan out of the deal, but naked Woody Harrelson found what was left over from the set. And, what can you say, really? I told him that there was a complete costume. He didn't really want to hear it. He's happy just the way he is. So, all right. New God of Thunder. And we'll put him right there. Okay, so as you can see, we have some paper to show you. Oh yeah, baby, because if you're anything like me, well, you love the paper. And speaking of Megos, here we have the Mego Museum's Mego Zine 1. This is a publication that came out in 2013, if I'm not mistaken, and this is by Brian Heiler, the gentleman who runs the Mego Museum, and it's got some wonderful features on those action figures that we love oh so very much. I quite like this article right here, talking about 6 monsters and a girl, when Azrak Hamway offered all your favorite creeps and creatures along with a female victim for them to menace. How can you go wrong, huh? Hey, it was the 70s. It was a wild time. And then here's another one of Brian's works. This is 1978 Reimagined, a fantasy Mego catalog from the Mego Museum. And it takes a look at what things might have been like, perhaps in one of those alternate universes that are so popular right now. Imagine if Mego hadn't passed on the Star Wars license. That's a question that many folks have pondered and is answered pretty effectively here. I gotta say, you get all the characters you would expect to see. And in the 70s, of course, Mego still had the Star Trek license, so they may have done something like this, using some pre-existing pieces and sculpting some new heads, and doing a great job, as always, on the outfits. You would have had some new aliens, some new crew members, and even Mr. Spock's Vulcan Explorer. Sounds a little dubious, doesn't it? I'd leave that to Nurse Chapel, you know what I'm saying? And then here we have the Wizard of Oz, and would have spun it off with all these characters that would have undoubtedly warmed the pegs. Oh, unquestionably. And then how about if Mego had Scooby-Doo? Here's the official world's greatest classic movie monsters. And then here it is. Shock! Yeah, I could barely believe it myself. These are interesting little magazines from the 1960s. This was definitely bottom of the rack fare. You'd probably have to dig for these. Kind of on the cheap side for sure. It's a magazine that's really skirting the edges when it's got the final page of the story on the back cover, but nonetheless, some very entertaining stuff in here. Don't really know a lot about Shock magazine, but I pick them up every time I see them. And then some eerie pubs for y'all. That is right. Myron Fass rises from the grave. In chilling picto-fiction, we have Weird and Tales from the Tomb. And, the covers alone make these absolutely collectible, but they have some dynamite stories in them as well. Most often reprints from the pre-code 1950s that have been gored up with some extra ink and slash marks. And then occasionally you get some original stories in there as well, but definitely very cool artifacts of a time that, well, will never come again, will it? Cheers. And then what do we have? Hey, it's Heartthrobs. That is right. If your heart throbs, consult your doctor. I think he can prescribe amyl nitrate. That stuff works pretty well from what I understand. It should help Judy here. She said she'd take him away from me if she came back, and she has. Oh, yeah, and she's bad news because, she's dressed from head to toe in red. I mean, that's a pretty big indicator, isn't it? Who else dresses head to toe in red? I don't know. Satan? Then here's love is the greatest mystery of all. Investigated in girls' love, secret hearts, girls' romances, falling in love, and heartthrobs. You'd think they would have gotten to the bottom of it by now with all these magazines exploring the topic, but, dames, they're just that enigmatic, aren't they? Speaking of enigmatic, here's the Invincible Iron Man 102. I was going to say 103. And it's the dawn of the Dread Knight. And I've always liked this guy. I dig his funky gothic styling. Absolutely. He makes a nice contrast to Iron Man and his sleek and shiny cutting-edge armor. This guy riding his horse with his wings. Oh, yeah. Can't go wrong. And then it's Ghost Rider, issue number 3. Is he alive or dead? Has he flames upon his head? Yes, and yes. How about that? Some kid took a pen to this cover. He went absolutely berserk. But once again, I would blame Satan as far as it goes. I mean, you got to have a patsy, don't you? And then, now, a lot of folks, well, they don't really think much of the film Carnival of Souls, do they? Herc Harvey's classic chiller has left many a person cold, but I, for one, love the film. I not only love the film for what it is, but I love it when it's riffed, especially by the boys over at Riff Tracks. They did an amazing job on this particular film, but, even without the commentary, it's a wonderful, atmospheric film that I could put on just about any time and get a kick out of it. And when I saw this, I thought, aw, come on, really? Talk about dredging the bottom of the barrel. And then I looked at the artwork, and I was like, wow, this is super odd. You know what I mean? It has a very underground comics feel. Yes, it does. And the more you flip through it, the more engrossing it gets. And its simplicity is actually illusory, because the more you get into it, the more complex and involved these panels become, and you realize that what might initially appear awkward is actually a very calculated approach on the artist's part to put you in the space that the film does. And I gotta say, that might sound like a bunch of crap, but, you can't argue with the overall effect. Absolutely. I read this couple weeks back on the bus, and I was incredibly moved. I was really impressed once again at this book, and looking at the narrative in a whole different way. And then on the back, well, you get this wonderful reproduction of the poster. And if you went to the movie thinking you were going to get this, you were sorely disappointed. Oh yeah, because it is the black and whitest of black and white movies for sure. This looks like it's going to be a Disney-esque romp compared to, what we got. But hey, here's to Herc Harvey and everyone who created the Carnival of Souls. May you spin round forever and ever. If I seem like I'm getting weird, it's this heat. Once again, I don't know how we're going to shoot these come summer. And, speaking of summer, hey, an Archie comic snuck in there. Imagine that, huh? I promise you it's the only one this time. It's Archie's Pals and Gals, number 88, and, a bit of a risque cover, if I do say so myself. Oh my, Betty showing a little shoulder. And then here's Winnie Winkle. But this is an interesting little book as far as it goes. It seems to be focusing on a group of kids, and not just the aforementioned Winnie, but I assume that she plays a pretty big role in this nonetheless. Pretty nifty book from Dell Comics. And I really love the texture on this cover. I love the printing. It doesn't quite look like a comic. It doesn't have any gloss on it, so it almost looks like a reproduction or something like that. But gosh, I don't really think there's a big market for that, so probably safe there. And then it's Young Love. Who brings you Young Love? Why, it's a prize publication. These are true romance confessions. Read Can't Help Wanting That Man. And then it's more Young Love. It's the original young romance group. Oh yeah, big 52 pages. Don't take less, young lovers. No, sir. You want the full 52 for your 10 cents. Don't miss Anybody's Girl. And then on the back, yipes! I could use a belly flattener. Boy, this sure takes me in. Oh yeah, you get a 10-day trial offer. Now to you, only $2.98. Hey, I think I'll order one for myself. Maybe two. Hey, I like to look as pretty as anybody. And then, oh yeah, here's the good stuff, baby. It's a little pre-code crime. Crime and Punishment, Illustories. Lee Gleason, publisher. Charles Biro and Bob Wood, editors. And these guys were like having gangsters come into your house once a month and rough you up. The story's definitely pretty edgy for both then and now. I love them. Always snatch these up anytime I can find them. This is number 39 from 1951 with a Charles Biro cover. Oh, you know it. And then, it's our last book. And some would say I saved the best for last. This is The Crypt of Terror. Now, initially, my LCS had put these out. There was a big stack of these East Coast reprints. And, I thought, I got a ton of EC comics. Do I really need another one? But the more I looked at this Jack Davis cover, the more I realized I couldn't possibly leave it behind. So out of that big stack, this is the one I took home, and I'm pretty happy with it, absolutely. And I may just save it for Halloween. I mean, why not? Right around the corner now, isn't it? Okay, well, from all of us to all of you, I bid you peace, my friends. Have a great weekend, and hopefully I'll see you next time. I'm Jason Mink. Cheers.